Autosomal recessive trait is a set of rare genetic diseases that if you have the gene for it, it can be very fatal because there's currently very limited treatment for them. I believe around 95% of those diseases don't have the treatment or therapy. Together in this video and the next couple of videos, we're going to work through a set of problems on autosomal recessive trait, including cystic fibrosis and Tay-Sachs, which are the very problematic genetic diseases. First of all, let's look at this pedigree. This pedigree represents a disease that is autosomal recessive. So what do we mean by autosomal recessive? Well, it means an individual with both of their alleles of a gene that are recessive. And so they will have the trait or the disease. So the shaded square and the circle, they represent an individual that is affected by the disease, which means that this individual will have the genotype of small a, small a, small a, small a, and small a, small a. This small a denotes the recessive allele of a gene. By the way, the square on the pedigree represents male, and the circle represents female. And you see the Roman numerals on the side here. They correspond to generations. So this one along the line will represent the generation 1. And the second one here is generation 2, and so on. In this particular pedigree though, you might wonder why the offsprings number 3 and number 4 of the third generation have the disease, when this side of the family doesn't show any sign of being affected. That brings me to my first point, which is whenever you see an affected individual, but their previous generation or generations are not affected by the disease, you can safely assume that one of the parents, in this case here, one of them must be a carrier. So in this case, we will say that in the first generation, either individual number 3 or individual number 4 must be heterozygous, which is to say that one of them must be big A and small a. The father is the carrier. So the mom is big A, big A. Both of them could be carriers, but one of them must be big A, small a. The reason for that is the individual number 4 of the second generation is a carrier, which she must have gotten the small a from one of her parents. Otherwise, the individual number 3 and also number 4 of the third generation, they cannot be affected by the disease or be small a, small a. So again, either individual number 3 or number 4 of the first generation must be heterozygous. The second point is whenever you see a pedigree with a trait that skips generations, for example, this one skipped a generation because generation 2 doesn't have any individual that is affected by the disease. That's one of the clues, and you can suspect that it is an autosomal recessive trait. The reason it skips generation is because the recessive allele is not as common as the dominant allele for this particular disease, and you need both recessive alleles together to observe the trait in an individual. So, recessive traits typically skip generations. That's the second thing to remember. The last and final point is look for the affected individuals, whether the disease is only observed in the males or the females, or both. Recessive autosomal traits appear equally in both sexes.